and maybe you guys can go back and forth and discuss a few things. So, Bebo, you are in the show, my man. What is up? Can't hear you.
Now?
Yep, hear you now.
All right. Didact is a educated person, right? That's Greek, right? Autodidact is a self-taught person.
Yes, that is my name.
Right. I used to go by autodidact a couple years back.
Oh, okay, yeah. I always
That's
called
funny.
myself autodidact. I just shortened it.
Yeah, that's a self-taught person in Greek, I believe, correct?
Yes.
But I wanted to talk, like, I agree completely with what you just said, right? That a Somali immigrant could never move to another country in the world and just move up the ranks. And that's completely true. You know, the problem is...
That was Citizen Man's quote, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. But the problem is, see, as a white man, if we say that, we're automatically labeled racist. Bigots.
And that's how they shut down the conversation and get you to not say it, because if you don't say it, nobody's going to think about it, and the fact goes unknown.
That's true. That's why voices like you aren't so important, because so many in the white community are scared to be labeled a bigot. When me and your first altercation was, see, I'm not scared. I'm not scared, you know. I don't care, right? That's how me and you met. Right?
I only got upset with you when you did the "we was Kangs" thing, because I don't like those motherfuckers either. You called me one of them. That pissed me off, Bebo.
Well, when you meet a lot of these, it's not pleasant when you meet one of these. I don't even know what to call them.
Wokies.
You know, black Jews or what's that?
You talking about the Hebrew Israelites?
Yeah, and they're talking about when I first met him, I was like, wow, man, am I living a real life Hunger Games? Like, what is going on out here? you know what I'm saying? Like it's see, I heard a lot of the racism from the white community. I'm white. I grew up, right, with white people. And what's amazed me is, like, a lot of the racism in the black community is literally just took what they were saying and flipped it, right? You know, like a 360 on you. You know, it's literally like a Hunger Games. You know, like
they really have flipped it around, because now it's like, if you're white and you say you do the wrong thing or look at somebody wrong, you get the third degree. And if you're black, you can just say whatever you want, no matter how ridiculous or how racist it is. But you know where that comes from, Bebo? I'm gonna tell you where that comes from. You know that liberal professor, that white lady that wears the glasses? I can't remember her name. She's old now. She's the one. She's one of those liberal professors or liberal teachers that goes around saying black people can't be racist, white people are inherently racist, and they teach this stuff in school and in the universities. And not only do black people, enter the world believing this, but white people enter the world believing this crap too. So they allow the black people to get away with the stupidity, and then the black people just carry out the stupidity and the racism, thinking that they're doing the right thing and thinking that they're justified in doing it. So it's like they justify the evil to make it look good. And if a man believes he's doing good, he's going to do it, as much as he can. You know what I'm saying? So you convince them that evil is good, and then they'll just go out and do the evil. Thus, racism is back again. It just happens to be the other way around. And it sucks, because it's like white people turning black people against white people, which is completely insane to me. That one I'm still trying to figure out.
Well, what it's also going to do is it's just going to cause the racism in the white community to explode too. You know, it's like Antifa. The natural result to Antifa was the Proud Boys, right?
Yeah.
If it wasn't the Proud Boys, it would have been someone else. But someone was going to fill that void. You get what I'm saying?
Yep. Hey, John, what's up, brother? You in the chat? You want to get on the show, man? I'm dropping a link. I'm doing a panel tonight. I had a brother that wanted to debate me. We were supposed to have a debate, but I guess it's not going to happen. There was one brother in the chat that said he is going to do it, but he said next time. So I guess we'll do it next time. I'm not saying he's scared or nothing. He said he had some things to do, and I respect that. So
I watched your debate with I forget
Brother
his name.
Sanchez.
Yeah, Brother Sanchez. And
Which one? The one on Tommy Sotomayor's channel?
Yeah, correct. And
Cool.
I honestly agree with both of you on some parts, right?
He made good points.
I don't fully believe that just voting is going to change it all, right? But I also don't believe not voting is going to change it either, right? So
yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword. But as far as like his points on it dividing people, it's completely true.
Yep.
You know.
And
I
that's
would
why
like to
when
interject on that. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
may I
Go ahead.
interject. Okay, for the regular people, this is for the regular people. Do you want to sit down and write a 1,500-page dissertation on how you're going to dispense of power? Because somebody going to have to sit down and write that. You have people in this world who have those patience to do that. Very few, not all. Because some people just want to go to work, live the simple life. Like I said to him before, on a remote control, there's a red power button. Most people just want to hit it and turn their TV on. They don't want to know how it works. But you got a few people who want to know how it works. And guess what they do? They break it down. They'll take it apart, see how it works. They probably even try to advance on the remote control. So you have these two types of people in this world, and they have to understand where they rank and file is, because they talk out of place when they think they can change the system. If you sit down and write some rules and regulations, write up a charter, give me your bylaws, and let me see if that can work. Let's apply it and see if it can work. Until then, get up off your ass and you can vote what they call abstention, meaning that you not voting for neither party, but you're showing up. It's like this. I told him this. It's like a basketball game. You will be a coward not to show up to the game. You understand? If you saying that you don't want to play, show up and then tell the motherfuckers at that time you don't want to play and walk off. You will be more respected showing up and walking off versus you just not showing up. Because now they get to talk about you like a dog. Oh, that whole ass nigga was scared. Oh, excuse my French. Oh, that punk was scared. Blase spliffy woo woo. They're gonna be talking about you like a dog. But at least you show self-respect by showing up, but you're not playing the game. I say, if in order for them to even know that you're not playing it, you got to make yourself known. So vote null and void, or vote abstention. You can vote that way. Don't vote for neither one.
Or
But
you can
show
write
up
in. You
and-
can write a candidate in too. Like
Exactly.
Like on November 3rd, if everybody that went out to vote decided to write Jaden Ben, which is my name, on the ballot, or even Citizen Man, because I guess that's my alias now, Citizen Man. If everybody wrote Citizen Man on the ballot, I would probably win.
Right.
You know
That's what
I'm
you
saying?
call a non-day plume.
Well, not for president. Not for president. Let me correct myself, because that's the Electoral College. I know, B-Boy, you're about to get me on that. For governor. If I ran for governor. If I didn't run for governor and the people were going to vote for governor and just wrote my name on the ballot instead, and I got the majority, I would be governor.
Yeah,
that.
see, here's the thing, right? 99% of elections, whether you like it or not, the person that spends the most money wins. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Right?
Because whoever spends the most money gets the biggest platform.
Right, that's right. Now, I encourage voting. I'm not here to tell you not to vote, right? As a matter of fact, go out and vote Trump 2020.
I second that.
Okay, but do I feel in my heart of hearts that just voting is going to make the difference? See, like your name, just what you said, Citizen Man, right? Do you know where citizen originates from?
I've heard several different breakdowns of it, but what's your
It was originally Latin for city dweller. The pagans were the country dwellers, right? Now, here's your theory. Okay, right now in this world, fascism is a bad word, right? Would you agree?
yes. It's a cuss
Okay.
word. Get you beat up like nigger.
Right. Now, communism used to be, but communism doesn't have that same pull anymore, right? Like if there's people that will openly just admit being a communist and believe they have the moral high ground. Right? Now, if you come out and you say I'm a fascist, you automatically lose the moral high ground in our society today, right?
Yep.
Now, you were debating and you were saying in that debate that government is like the system, like either you were comparing it to Windows or Apple's operating system, correct?
It was Bro Sanchez's analogy, but I did build off it. Yeah.
Right. So he and you said, okay, there's someone sitting at that computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that someone can fix that, right? Like Didac said, there's people that tear it apart, right? And get into it, right?
Right.
Now, here's how I look at it. Like, I don't view like fascism, monarchy, communism. I don't look at them as bad or good, right? I look at them as like an operating system, right? Now, them same systems can be corrupted, right? Like hypothetically, in my ideology, the way
Hey, Bebo, hold that thought. We got somebody that disagrees in the chat. Iger Television, I like what you're saying. You're making some pretty good points. But as far as Trump and Hillary being cousins, that cannot be proven. That is just your belief. But if you'd like to come on up and disagree with us, come on up. And VJ, you made a really good point about, and it was a counterpoint to you, Bebo, about whoever spends the most money wins. But he did say, in all fairness, VJ, he did say in 99% of all politics, not 100. So the 2016 election would have been in that 1% where it didn't happen.
Trump had free media.
Yes, Trump had enough recognition, and he already had the platform that he didn't have to buy, like Hillary had to buy. But if you guys want to come on the show, I dropped a link in the chat, so click that link and come on up if you disagree. Iger, I really want to hear from you, man. I really want to hear from you.
Okay,
because,
so you want me to keep going?
Go ahead.
So,
yeah, you got it, Bebo.
Hypothetically, like my belief is under a righteous monarchy, let's say you got a king that is completely righteous, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a better form of government than democracy, in my opinion. Because, okay, now hypothetically, I always get into arguments with libertarians and they want to have smaller government, right?
Yeah, which isn't a bad thing.
I disagree. It is a bad thing.
Smaller government is a bad thing?
Let me explain.
Yeah, I want to hear this.
let's say we cut. How many congressmen are there? Like 500 something?
535.
Right? And there's 100 and what senators?
There's 435 in the House of Representatives, 100 senators, I believe.
Okay, let's say we
535 altogether.
Let's say we cut them in half. Would you view that as a good thing?
Well, I don't think they mean, when they say smaller government, I don't mean smaller government in terms of less representation for the people.
Right.
I think they mean smaller government in terms of less regulatory agencies. You
Okay.
get what I'm saying? Because remember, there's the agencies that are basically ran by the executive, but have to follow the laws of the legislature, the legislative, right? The legislative branch. So both branches, the executive and the legislative, have control over the agencies. But if there are too many agencies, every agency is designed to enforce certain laws and regulations on the people. So the less agencies that we have enforcing these laws and regulations would mean the less laws and regulations. And I think that's what they mean by smaller government. So your interpretation of smaller Congress actually would entail less representation, but it would have no effect on the agencies. So it would be less agencies.
Who looks over those agencies usually?
People appointed by the executive.
Well, a lot of times there's congressional oversight committees.
Yeah, committees. I was about to say that.
True.
Right.
Now the committees, yeah. So by watches over, you mean who holds them accountable?
Right.
Exactly.
So
Because
we've been trying to cut government for years that way.
Yes.
By cutting bureaucracy, it hasn't worked. So
because
if
we
you
haven't abolished the agencies, man, we got to abolish some entire.
You can't abolish the agencies because you have these senators that want to be on these committees so they can go back home and say, look what I've done. Look what I brought home. They get these pork projects, right?
And
these bureaucracies are the biggest pork projects of them all.
Oh, wow.
I agree.
Yes.
And
Right?
this is where the voting comes in, because how do those senators get there? People vote for them. So if we vote for senators who have no interest in doing that, then we wouldn't have that problem.
I get you, but I'm saying maybe we're going about it the wrong way. Cut the government. If you cut them in half, they're going to be overflowed with work. And they're going to want to cut agencies because they're not going to be able to overlook them. There's going to be half the workers.
That's a good point. That's a good way to apply pressure to them. But what will be the trade-off in doing that, though? Because
the trade-off is now you have more power and less hands.
That's deep. That's deep. But more power and less hands doesn't necessarily. I mean, that puts us in a more precarious position, because if those hands just so happen to be the wrong hands, we're going to have ourselves a problem. Now, if it's the right hands, then your plan will work. But here's a downside to it that I see. The downside to it that I see is if there's less regulation, if let's say you cut Congress in half, so all the committees got double the agencies to deal with, they're going to be agencies with issues that never get dealt with. And if those agencies' jobs are to not only regulate, but also to serve the people, and there's no committees for oversight, then those agencies get to run wild and the people end up suffering. So I think it should be a balanced approach where, along with the representation, we cut the agencies as well, so the representatives don't get overwhelmed and the agencies get to run wild under the radar because there's nobody overseeing them.
A prime example of less government that the Congress was fighting for and less government is the Human Health and Social Services / Department of Corrections, because the Department of Corrections wanted to get out of that Human Health and Social Services regulation bubble, because they wanted to do their prisons how they wanted to do their prisons. So what they did, they privatized, of course. And so now the government regulations ain't so much a part of the prisons anymore. For instance, Canteen is $1 trillion business. That's an exaggeration, but it's like a $100 million business or $1 billion business. That's the reason why Michael Jordan invests in prisons. It's the food. That's
not the black Michael Jordan. That's not the black Michael Jordan. I just got to put that out there. So stop lying on that man.
But he did invest in prisons now. And him doing
not
that,
the black Michael Jordan. It's not him. It's a white guy named Michael Jordan. I swear it's not him.
So it ain't Michael Jordan, the actual basketball player.
It ain't Jumpman. Nope. It ain't 23.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Stop lying on that man.
I'm sorry for the mistaken identity, but whoever put the information out there, I guess they baited me in it, because
they probably got just as confused as we were, because I thought it was Mike too, but it ain't.
Yeah, it's a cash cow, and I'm assuming he invested in that. But yeah, just in the food alone, the food service alone is almost $1 billion business, and they didn't want the Human Health and Social Services regulating that. They
Mhm.
wanted to privatize that part of the prison also. So what they did, they made a compromise. And the compromise is keep our social workers up in there. You can regulate your prisons the way you want to, but just keep our social workers up in there because the reentry programs and all those programs, those government programs. So they got to keep those in the prison. That's the only thing that is government in prisons. So that is a prime example of the the people who was holding the deeds for the prisons. They lobbied hard for them to get them up out of their business. And lobbying, you got to have that money to even lobby. And the prison people is almost like football franchise owners. They got that money and they lobbied hard. And right now, damn near like 85% of the prisons are privatized.
Yeah. So, Didact, are you for private prisons or not?
When it comes down to rehabilitation into a society, uh, no, I don't want private prisons in it. I want a little bit of regulation in that. But private prisons in terms of how they treat their prisoners, yeah, that's totally up to the warden or whoever owns that prison in terms of how they treat them.
See,
Now,
now here's my opinion on it. I want no prisons, none, zero.
So what do we do with the criminals?
We have sin taxes for those that do minor crimes, and ones that we deem unsavable, we give them some lead poisoning.
Well, that would make things a whole lot simpler, but you're gonna piss a lot of people off, man.
Hey, listen, I lived in a
I don't
neighborhood
disagree though.
where they opened up halfway houses in my neighborhood and let child molesters move into these halfway houses.
And property
Without-
values plunged 50,000 in 3 months.
Didn't come to the neighborhood, didn't ask. But here's my opinion on this. If we deem you not responsible enough to own a gun, and it's because of your criminal activity, why should you be out here with me?
That is true.
Why?
Mhm.
You know, and I'm not talking someone that's handicapped. We could do stuff like that for people that we determine they just mentally. I'm talking about
Well,
criminals. If,
right.
if these people, judges sit up there and they're like, this man is not safe enough to be out here with a gun, I'm going to take his right away to own a gun. Why do you think they don't care? Because they're not living in your neighborhood. That's why they don't care.
Mhm.
Yeah. And this is the truth. Now, I believe like minor crimes, fraud, stuff. We were talking about this, people going to prison and you're right, getting locked up for these minor crimes. Dude, do sin taxes. Do sin taxes. Okay. You committed
But here's the
fraud.
thing, Bebo. You gotta, in order to really practically implement that, first you have to draw the line between what's a minor crime and what's a major crime. Because a lot of times what the state might view as a minor crime could be a major crime to someone else. Like, I don't know, that poor father that's only got this last $20 in his pocket and he's going to buy food for his starving kid and he's on the way to the store and gets robbed. Yeah, he got robbed. Somebody stole his $20. That's a minor crime, but his kid just starved to death now because he doesn't have any damn money to feed his kid. That's major to that father. So
Yeah.
who makes this moral determination of what's major and what's minor? You know, and I think that's how we
Society.
ended up with the system that we have now. Yeah, it's just, yeah, exactly. You're right. And that's how we got the system that we have now, because they're kind of trying to accommodate everybody and everything by using this one size fits all prison system. And for the most part, in terms of keeping society intact, it has worked, I would say.
I disagree.
But
They're
there's
not
two-
using this one size fits
But there's
all.
but there's too many flaws. No, I mean the one size fits all. Like, a prison sentence is a prison sentence. So if you stole a car, but you're not a tough guy, you still get thrown into the same prison with the people who murdered other human beings. You know what I'm saying? So if prison is a one size fits all.
No, because there's injustice in sentencing. The sentencing guidelines are so variable. Like they could give one guy 1 year for selling some marijuana, let's say, or they could, in other areas of the country, they could lock him up for 40 years.
True. And here's a little fact that a lot of people don't realize, especially black people. And I have to say this to my brothers, especially my brothers that's out there in the street. Whenever a black man commits a murder, he gets a lot of time. When a white man commits a murder, he gets a lot of time. But when it comes to, because murder is murder and there's really no way around it. But when it comes to crimes like attempted murder or battery or assault or other violent crimes, a lot of times in a lot of cities, the black person charged with the same crime would get a heavier sentence than the white person charged with the same crime. Now, that's for several reasons. And we could say it's socioeconomic, because a lot of times the white person has a support system and can afford a lawyer and the black person doesn't, so they can't. So they get the short end of the stick. Or the white person would be in a district where, certain crimes are handled, sentenced a lot more lenient, and the black person will be in a district where, racist Democrats run everything, so they want them to go to prison. But here's the legality behind the overstated sentences. Think about what are the what's the word I'm looking for? What's the criteria that constitutes a hate crime? Committing an act of violence against somebody while using a racial hate slur or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they say for reasons because of the person's race. But how do you determine it's because of the person's race? It's because of a racial slur that they use that indicates that, hey, this person hates this person because of their race. They're harming them because they hate them for their race. Thus, it constitutes a hate crime. You get a stiffer sentence, right? Now, black people, we use the word nigga a lot. And a racial slur would constitute, or the word nigga would constitute a racial slur. So if we run around calling each other niggas and committing violent acts against each other, the courts, they won't openly tell you this, but when it comes to the sentencing, the courts will use the hate crime sentencing guidelines. Thus, black suspects get more, or black defendants would get harsher sentences than white defendants, because white defendants normally don't rob each other and call each other nigga, but black ones do. So
that makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah. It's kind of like, it's the same thing with the jury nullification. Do you know that all throughout the 90s, crack cocaine could have been made legal? Cocaine could have been made legal. Weed could have been made legal. Every drug on the books could have been made legal. You know why? Jury nullification. Not only does the jury have the right to judge innocence or guilt, but the jury also has the right to judge the validity of the law under which this person is charged. So let's say Didac or Didac and Bebo, both of y'all hang out together, y'all smoke weed together, y'all go pick up a bag together, you headed back to the apartment to go smoke or whatever. Cops pull you over, they find the weed, they arrest both of you get charged. During the charging process, they would make it seem like if you go to trial, you won't stand a chance because you got caught with the weed on you, so there's no way to argue your way out of it. So most people just cop out to the charges, right? But let's say you guys decide to say, you know what, I'm going to go to trial. And you go to trial, and you, instead of getting a public defender, you represent yourself. And you don't defend whether you had the weed or not. You defend the fact that the law is bullshit and you shouldn't be here in the first place. And there's a story of a guy called the New Jersey Weed Man. Got caught with a whole pound of weed in New Jersey where weed was completely illegal. And he went to court and got the jury to find him not guilty. And the man went home because he argued that the laws against weed were bullshit and shouldn't be on the books. And the jury said, we find this man not guilty because the law is invalid. And he walked. And juries, if people in mass knew these things, when you get selected for jury duty, you go sit on that jury and you can let an innocent man go home, because technically a man walking around with a substance in his pocket that he plans to use on himself is of no consequence to anyone else in the eyes of the law. So for him to be criminally charged and put in prison it's bullshit. So as Americans, had we seen things this way and understood the power we have as the people, because this is what I keep saying, we the people have a lot more power than we know. Had we understood these things and understood our power, you could sit in that jury box and you can change laws. You can legislate from the jury box. And the more cases of weed that would have came before the courts and the juries found the person's not guilty because the law wasn't, because they didn't see any validity in the law under which that person was charged, guess what would happen? Certain states and cities would they would just stop charging people for it and leave them alone, because now the cops know we'd take you to jail, but you're going to beat this case. So there's no point. You see what I'm saying? And we, the people, have the power to change it. But again, the complainers would only look at one side, look at the courts, look at what happens to people in the courts, look at the prison system and how they railroad people and shit, and not think to say, you know what, if I learn how to play their game, I can use their game against them. Isaac Wright Jr. is another name. He got sentenced to prison for a crime he didn't commit, spent 7 years in prison. During his 7 years, he learned the law, he fought his case, and he did such a good job defending himself that in presenting his case to get himself out of prison, he also uncovered a lot of misgivings and illegal acts committed by the arresting officers, the investigators, the district attorneys, and people went to jail over that shit. And I'm talking about court people went to jail over that shit. And the man is free as a bird now, and he got paid off by the state. And this was a black man that did that.
Right.
So it's not impossible.
Know about that story.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know what, man? That holds validity straight up, because I was explaining to you before. To say the least, I got a lengthy record. I'm not squeaky clean here. But with that being said, the first time that I actually got caught in a dragnet, I had a public pretender, not knowing that this is the bottom of the barrel, but I'm assuming that he got my best interest at heart, because he's telling me what he's going to tell, the judge and tell the DA. And we went over the stuff and, the facts was there. Now, this is what I did not know, is that a paid lawyer would have gotten me off on that. But because I did have a public pretender, I did end up doing time in jail, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. It will apply to the white man. It will apply to him, right?
Didac, it gets back to what I was saying with government. You got to overload it. If every single person charged with a crime wanted it to go to jury trial, do you know how set back they would be?
Yeah, you'd be waiting 5 years to go to jury trial.
If every single person charged and they did no pleas, we're taking it to jury trial every time.
Right. Now that's where the ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's because they don't know the law.
Here's the problem. It's not ignorance of the law. It's the fact that if you fight them, let's say you go to jury trial and you lose, guess what happens?
They hit you
harder. They hit you harder.
Yeah, for sure. That I do know.
And this is why before you go to jury trial, you got to know it. Like me, I can go before a jury trial and win because I know how the law works and I know how to talk the talk. You know what I'm saying? So when I start expressing the law and applying the law to my situation, the courts will have no choice but to uphold whatever demands or whatever case that I make. Because I always use this analogy, and it's the best analogy I can think of. It's like you're in court. It's like you're on the basketball court in court, right? You're playing a basketball game. If somebody smacks the ball out of your hands and you say, ow, you just smacked my arm, the game goes on. Nobody hears you out. Nobody listens to you. But if you say foul, everybody stops. And now you get possession of the ball. So you can be on the right track and you can say the right things. But if you don't know the right words to use, then your voice will go unheard and you won't win. You see what I'm saying?
Well, even jury nullification, the problem with that, and I agree with you, everything you say is completely true. But the issue with that is sometimes a judge can step in and they can strike that, and they can say, there's been lawyers that have tried to notify jurors of this option, and the judge will hop in and be like, no, strike that. You cannot tell these juries that this is a possible even possibility. Right?
And the judge can do that once the case comes before them on the docket. That's why the juries, as individual citizens, you guys hear my puppies in the background? They're making a lot of noise.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, sorry. That's why the juries, the individuals on the juries, need to understand this in their own private time and not wait for a lawyer in court to tell them. Because once that case comes on the docket and comes before that judge is the presiding judge over that case. That judge can now make the rules of that case. And one of the rules would be, we're not informing these motherfuckers on the law. They need to just know it. And this is why it's important for us to know the law on our own. Alexander Loganov, you said the system is designed to fail. I hear that a lot, but nobody can tell me how, because I just gave several examples of how you can win in the system and win against the system. So if you'd like to join the panel, seeing as though you have a differing opinion, I sure would love to hear you out. And I don't want to have to keep stopping the guys on the panel to talk in the chat. So if you want to join the panel, I'll drop the link in the chat for you. You can come on up and, enlighten us on a few things, because whether we agree or we disagree with you, there's always value in what people say.
Are you guys familiar with Ross Ulbricht?
I am.
Right.
No, I'm not.
Citizen, how much you know about him?
Not too much. Hold on a second. I got to go do something about these
No
puppies.
I'll keep it going for a sec. So Didact, Ross Ulbricht is a computer engineer that started a dark net market website called the Silk Road. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I didn't hear it that, but I know a friend who's on that dark web shit. But go ahead.
Yeah, and he was highly into Bitcoin and stuff like that. And Silk Road, he started Silk Road as a Craigslist for people that voluntarily want to commit commerce and interact with each other. But he had no regulation on it whatsoever. And this man, the government came after him and they convicted him, and he got double life sentences plus 40 years without parole.
Wow.
And this man's worth $28 million when they seized him, when they took him to jail.
He sound like he got hung out to dry. I'm pretty sure he taking that to appeal.
Dude, it don't matter. He was 28 years old. He's been in prison now for 8 years. No one knows about it. The general public don't know. The bottom line is people don't care, man. And this is a man that was worth $28 million.
It's unfortunate that you're right, because we. And
Wasn't that done under Obama, Bigo?
Yeah,
and I'm what you say now?
No, I was asking if Ross went down under Obama, but go ahead, bro. You got it.
He was convicted right before Obama left.
But it's unfortunate, even with me, my head was in the sand on that. I didn't know nothing about this very wealthy man who created a website have to do 2 life sentences and plus 40 years because his content wasn't right. His content wasn't regulated on his website. That to me sound like he was hung out to dry, and they was making him an example for those who do know about him. I didn't know nothing about him. That's that cyber economics or cyber politics. I have the slightest idea what goes on in that world. I just know that.
Let me give you some background on the kid. He was a Boy Scout as a young man, went up to Eagle Scout, straight A student in Austin area. He graduated in 2002. He went to the University of Texas at Dallas, full academic scholarship. He graduated in '06 with a bachelor's degree in physics from the University of Pennsylvania. And then he studied science and engineering. And he's never been convicted of a crime in his life prior to this.
I don't know if he was. It sounded like to me like he was on some. He must have had information privileged. Otherwise, nobody didn't have, and
That's what I was going to say.
So my question is though,
because Bebo,
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Make your point.
Where's the outrage for this man? We're talking about prison reform, police reform.
He was white.
No one cares about
this.
Right? No one cares about him. He's locked up for the rest of his life. And this is the problem with the law. It used to be beyond a reasonable doubt. That used to be the standard, right? Now they pull you over, they find drugs under your seat, and they're like, well, you were the driver. How's that beyond a reasonable doubt?
Well, Bebo, that's because beyond a reasonable doubt doesn't apply until you get into the courtroom and it's you and the judge or you and the judge and jury. On the street, it's literally the cop's own discretion as to whether he wants to take you to jail or not. Like a cop literally has the power to walk up to any individual and say, put your hands behind your back, you're under arrest because I believe you committed a crime. They can do that. And if you resist, even though it's an illegitimate arrest, if you fight them, they can now legitimize that arrest and call and charge you with resisting arrest. But once you go to court, you can claim that you resisted arrest because it was a false arrest to begin with. And if you have enough evidence to prove that, then you will get the charges dropped. But this is where the saying comes in. You can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. So I say in that sense, the police have a little too much power. But then at the same time, you got to understand that there's criminals out there that pretend to be innocent people. So when you see cops, harassing innocent people, they harass criminals that seem innocent at first until they find out that they're criminals. You know what I'm saying? So it's a double-edged sword, and that's a whole nother discussion to have. But before I pass you the mic back, we got Alex. Alex is actually going to come on the panel too, so I'm going to bring him in the show. So Bebo, you say your point, and then we'll pass it to Alex since he's new.
My point is, if you're in a car full of people, someone throws drugs under your seat, that's doubt. Once the thing is, they get into the court system and they go after the driver all the time. That's standard operating procedure. The owner of the car.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's because the driver, by law, is responsible for everything and everyone in that car. So the only way the driver would get charged is if everybody in that car says the drugs aren't mine. The cops are going to say, well, the drugs belong to somebody, so we're going to pin it on a driver. But if the person in the back seat says, you know what, cop, the drugs are mine, and everybody else in the car says the drugs aren't mine, including the driver, then that person in the back seat gets pinned with the drugs. Like my older brother about 15 years ago was in that exact same situation. And the driver was going to get charged, but because he admitted to being the owner of the drugs, he went to jail. So it's not always on the driver, but the driver is the default number one fallback. Now, if somebody dropped it in your car and you got pulled over by yourself and there's no one else with you, then automatically it goes on you because there's no other physical human being there to accept responsibility for it. Thus, it's your
you will admit there's probably people that were drivers that have been convicted of crimes where it was not their drugs.
Absolutely. And that would be not only a failure on the part of the police to properly investigate the situation, but it's also a failure on the part of the individual to properly defend them, to adequately defend themselves. Because again, in that basketball game, somebody smacks your arm, it's a foul, and you have, you're right to stop the game. But if you don't call foul, the game won't stop.
I agree.
But Alex, what's going on, brother? What's up?
Well, okay. Well, I guess what I was trying to say was, what I mean, the system is designed for the system is designed for us. Let's take, for instance, somebody's on probation or something else like that. The system is designed for that person on probation to fail, to put that person back in jail. Absolutely. A person, it's all designed that way. Here's the other one that's actually quite a beauty. We actually kind of think about. Let's take something just a little bit smaller. Let's look when we get pulled over for a traffic stop. And we've got to go through all the hassle. The ticket's only $25, but your court costs and everything else, next thing you got a $500, $600 ticket. It's all designed. Everything is designed for failure. It's designed for us to fail and for the system to continue to go. The system really does need to be overhauled because it's not designed. It is not designed for anybody. You're turning around and saying, if the system was right, my brother, you wouldn't have to do what you have to do. Another person would get good representation, but it's designed for, because the court needs money, the jail needs money, the system needs money. Brother, you're going to jail because I need the money. The monster needs the money. The bitch needs the money.
I would like to interject on the fact that I don't know if anybody's taken into account the district attorney's office. That's where all the magic happens in terms of who gets charged, charges get dropped before you even get to court.
And that's an elected position.
Huh?
That's an elected position. You know that, right? People vote for
that's exactly it. That's exactly where I was about to get at. Again, you said where the voting don't count. In that instance, it does. Now, this is what's supposed to happen in the world, right? I mean, it's played out in the America lexicon and in the movies and all of that. Your top criminals are best friends with the district attorney. That means when they get busted or the organization get busted down, the time that they get ain't as hard. It's like the Italian mafia. What they not telling you is that they best friends with the district attorney and some of the judicial, the judges and whatnot, but they all inside the jurisprudence. They all in there. This is where a lot of people lack at, and I'm going to say this loosely, poor white trash and black folks. This is where we lack.
Brother, that's cold.
Terms of.
He said that's cold.
Brother, that's called incest. All these people, man, are all incestual.
Yeah, I agree.
Why we gotta bring up incest every time white people are mentioned?
Hey, it happens in the black community too, man. It happens in the black community too.
Right, right. But
just because it's not talked about doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Oh, don't deny that isn't a racist play though out here.
But yeah, this is what takes place in these courtrooms. So you're more likely to see like unfair sentencing or people getting hit over the head for a weak crime that they done commit. Because I done seen white folks for child support here in Wisconsin get 20 years.
Yeah.
So, and he was a white man. And so when it comes down to it,
that
now,
is crazy.
I didn't know what was his representation in terms of that nature, but yeah, when I was up north, he was up north with me. He got 20 years for child support.
His ex was probably banging the DA.
Well,
it's a strong possibility, but yeah, some people don't know that if you are in bed with the DA or if you are like active with the DA, a lot of information that ain't privy is privy to you.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. My position, like, I don't have all the answers, right? Like, who has all the answers, right? But I definitely think outside the box, right? And I definitely, I'm not one of these right-wing supporters that think it's patriotic to support a system that's strangling you, right? Like, You know, now, do I have all the answers? No, but I'm thinking outside the box. I'm trying something differently. Like, you know, that's the old saying, if you try the same thing over and over and expect different results, right? That's
Now,
insanity.
Here's an example of how this kind of work, the system that I'm talking about. I'm telling a little story about myself. Okay. It was unfortunate. My baby mama tried to run me off the road. I'm walking across a bridge, freeway up under the bridge, and she has my baby in the back seat. Wild as fuck. So, you know, I'm dealing with them kind of problems, quote unquote. So after she did that, the neighbors called the police on her. She get arrested. She get charged for attempted murder, right? I was not going to press any charges anyway, but to so-called to double down on it, right? The uncle hired a lawyer. Me, the uncle, and the lawyer go down to the district attorney's office to make sure that all the charges was dropping and was not going to court. So in that essence, I know from firsthand that you can influence crime at the district attorney's office. You can like alleviate it. You can stop it. It won't even go in front of a bench.
Yeah,
and
that
that's
makes
where
it.
your money.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because the McCloskeys with the Black Lives Matter protesters coming on their property and then them coming outside with guns after these motherfuckers were saying, we're going to burn the house down, we're going to kill your whole family. Now the McCloskeys are being charged. The same thing with the white woman at the Chipotle, when the black women were you know, being aggressive with her and starting to surround her and being intimidating. You know, the way those hood fights start, the exact same way. The woman decided to draw her weapon and tell them to back the fuck up. Now they're trying to come after her legally. So yeah, you're right, bro. You're right. It's all up to the district attorney, and in places where
it's the media that puts pressure on them, right? That's the reason they decide.
Well, that and look at the 6 who pay for their campaigns.
You're familiar?
The guys they're calling that the media tried to come out and say are Trump supporters, and that was debunked in a matter of minutes. That these guys were Antifa. I knew it from the minute I saw the picture of the guy's video, and he had those big ass gay ass those cow nose rings in his ears. What are they called? Gauges. Like Trump supporters don't mutilate themselves like that. They're no goddamn Trump supporters.
Irrelevant if they're Trump supporters or they're Antifa. Soon as it came out, both sides were like, we don't want nothing to do with them. You know, and both.
Well, one side was lying and the other side was telling the truth.
Yeah. But soon as and we don't. How much do we really know about this story? These people are already convicted as like the worst people in the world. And I've been reading all the stories I can get on, and I still, it's very vague. Like I don't know.
If you really want to get the full story, you look at the names of the people mentioned and then go look at their Twitter pages and you'll see whose side they're really on. And it ain't ours.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even saying that in the political opinion, whether these people are already convicted.
Well, that's being spun by the media, and they're already being convicted by the media because part of the spin is to make people believe these guys are Trump supporters. So now they have to convict them because Trump bad, Trump supporters are bad. See, look, bad Trump supporters, bad. But once it starts coming out that they're not,
you notice they're pushing the word militia lately. Militia,
because the real legitimate militias in this country support who? Trump. And who supports the militias in this country? Trump. Remember when the militias came out during the lockdowns in Michigan? What did Trump say? They're very good people.
Yeah. Well, the militia is actually in the Constitution. Yeah,
exactly.
And they're sitting there, they're trying to make an organization that's actually mentioned in the Constitution to be a bad word.
Right, because they're doing it by way of false flag now. They're having their leftist Antifas go out to pretend to be Trump supporters, to do fuck shit, get themselves in trouble, get themselves fucked up. And then when the people see them getting in trouble or consequences falling on them because they try to do X, Y, and Z, that gives the sheep out there the impression that, oh, we knew these Trump supporters were violent. We knew these Trump supporters wanted to overthrow the government. Trump supporter bad, Trump supporter bad, Trump supporter bad. Because remember, since the Obama years, they were demonizing the militias. Even Obama was demonizing the militias. Now the militias are in support of Trump, and Trump is in support of the militias. So now they have to demonize both parties, Trump and the militias. You know what I mean? So it's like and because it hasn't been working, the demonization in the media hasn't been working. Now they have to force it. It's the same dynamic with the race narrative. Trump supporters are racist. Trump supporters are racist, but Trump supporters haven't really done any racist attacks. So what does the left do? Commit racist attacks against themselves to say it's Trump supporters. Same dynamic. Militias are bad. Militias are bad. Militias are going to overthrow the government. Militias didn't do that. So what do? They get their own minions to pretend to be militia to get themselves caught trying to do that.
No, it's people bad, people bad, people bad. That's when the overseers of our United States people in our Congress and in our Senate and our overseers, when they look at us as nothing more than cattle, that we have to support them, that's all we are. We have to understand that. That's what, when you actually think about it, that's what Trump's trying to expose, is how they look at us. They look at us as just cattle. That's all we are. They don't care about us.
Now, let me ask you something, Alex.
Sure.
Let me ask you something, Alex. Do you think that dynamic can be changed if the people really got together and elected representatives who shared the same sentiments as Trump? Do you think that would be possible? Because I think so.
I do too, and I don't think we need to be far right. I don't think we need to be far left. I think there's a middle ground. There truly is a middle ground of understanding. That's with us. We have so many. There are 4 of us here tonight. We have so many ideas, and you want to know something? If we were sitting at a table and we were governing, we'll say, "What the hell? Let's try him." What else we got to try? Let's be reasonable and to kind of do that. But the biggest problem is, I think on the lower levels of where we at, I think the cattle agree. And the biggest problem right now is the biggest dynamic is the people against the government. This is where the dynamic is. People are not kind of seeing. This is the biggest. This is not about race. It's about the people against its government, whether you're left or right. There's the common goal. And we understand that what's happening in Washington is not in anybody's interest. It's only in their interest.
Well, I would like to reiterate that it ain't about Republicans or Democrats. It's about the conservative and the liberal. If you leave it up to the liberal, he say everything one size fits all. That's the liberal mindset. The conservative is say, take your time. Let's see what happens. If it works, let's continue it. If it don't, let's change it.
Here's my problem with the conservatives, right? The conservatives will come out and they'll, right now, conservatives rail on media left and right, right? Okay. Do you know how much subsidies our government gives the media? Do you know how much? Millions and millions of dollars is being given to the media from our government, right?
Yes.
They complain about the sports teams even, right? Do you know how, most of them stadiums, a lot of the money comes from taxes to build them stadiums.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So we can do it. Yeah, I get it. No, we borrow. The city borrows the money, and the taxpayer got to pay it off. And what do they call it to get everybody? We're bonding it. We're bonding it. We're, and it's like, oh man, I'm getting screwed here. When I hear the word bond, I'm screwed.
Well, you have to understand, right? I would put it to you like this. It's like, I guess this is they say a Roman Empire, right? With gangs, and you have to do something with an idle time with people who do work most of their life, and they have to vent. They have to vet. They have to go somewhere and occupy themselves. So what happens in corporation, within the corporation, is that business is being done where you got your big business owners, oil tycoons, and tricklets owners, people who make them little tricklets. They billionaires too. All these company owners, they'll come together and they'll say, okay, we finna entertain the people. What we need for the what America's system is already set up for taxpaying, because this is my honest opinion. If you leave it up to the individual to pay their taxes on their own recognizance, you will never get no taxes paid. So it's a involuntary, mandatory thing anytime that you work. So that tax also goes into your working tax, right? Your city tax will go up or your state tax will go up, and that's to be funded for the corporation that is now giving you sports or entertainment or whatever the case may be. Because even with occupation, to pay for that building is still coming out of the taxpayer's dollar. To even have that building to occupy them so they can make money for a living. So what you have in terms of the incorporation, not incorporation, it's the unincorporated. It's the unincorporated, because that's who your stadiums are. Because the only thing they do is just provide
entertainment.
Right, that's it for a town, city.
Maybe that's the problem. We're being entertained too much, because our cities are falling apart.
Yes, indeed. But the people vote for it for some odd reason, because the people, they don't vote for a stadium or no thing like that for no sports team, but they do legislate for it, and the Congress actually votes it in. It's just like if a team moves to a new city, the governor has to improve it, the local senate and the federal level, they have to approve for that stadium to come before they even build it. It was like this. It's like Foxconn. Foxconn was going to come up here. They was going to be incorporated, and Tony Evers, the Democrat, torpedoed the whole deal. And
Same
it was going to
with
provide
AOC with Amazon in New York.
Right. So it adds to the tax base, but at the same time, it's almost like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Of course, they're going to want their money up out of it, but at the same time, it is beneficial. It's called debt wealth. That's how this America is operated. It's operated under debt wealth.
Well, let's get some debt wealth into these real neighborhoods, the community. Where how come you can buy a dilapidated house for less than you can build a brand new one?
Okay, I could give you a prime example on that. And this is a black man who's doing this. Okay, the city has sanctioned his company, right, to be the official beautification of our bad neighborhoods, because we're going through a stage of gentrification. And I guess they want to make Fair Seaman look good, so they put a black man ahead of the development. And I know him personally, and he's doing a great job in the city. That's another prime example. The man got like $100 million in bonds. It ain't money, but it's bonds. It's almost like money. Only thing he can put it towards is beautifying the neighborhood. So just say if you wanted some money in your neighborhood, just say, for instance, called the Lancy Heights neighborhood, and you advocating to beautify your neighborhood, new fences, fresher grass, or whatever the case may be. This developer will come along, and he got the money and the means and resources to fix your neighborhood up. A lot of black folks don't know that this exists. That's the reason why, like street posts, you'll see in neighborhoods, like in urban neighborhoods, you'll see the street posts. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful light posts, beautiful street signs, and then you start seeing the hood. Because the street lights is different, the street signs and all that. the development.
I
Oh,
get
go
it.
ahead.
I get it. But why is it not working?
Because it's like this. Our participation is moot.
Yeah, I was gonna say
We
that.
keep it. Yeah,
I
we
was
keep
just gonna say that
investing.
the people ain't doing their part, man.
Exactly. So we investing in the wrong people. We've been investing in the wrong people for the last damn near 100 and some odd years. Ever since the fucking uh Abraham Lincoln, since the Lincoln Party, we've been fucked up ever since then.
I mean, it makes no sense to me. We can build these beautiful stadiums. We got the inner cities dilapidated. We got a lot of people in the suburbs and in the inner cities laid off, not working. I mean, this is common sense to me.
Yeah, it is, but you have to understand who's dictating it. And it's unfortunate. It took me a while to get up out of it because at first I was a hardcore Democrat and not knowing what the fuck this left wing was really doing, because what it was doing was aiding and abetting bad behavior. It was a pacifier. And I didn't start realizing this until I started getting into my own business. When I started getting into my own business, which I'm in horticulture, I was trying to explain that last time, but that's no here or there. But my business requires me to do business in a fashion where I got to know, the ups and downs, rules and regulations. I got to know what I can't use and what I can't use, what I can use and what I can't use. I have to know all these things. And if I had took a aiding and abetting approach, I would have not known how to start my own business. Instead of me not taking that approach, if I wouldn't have took that approach, I would probably be working for somebody right now, to say the least, and not knowing that I can further myself. Because even if when I did, the conservative mind is this. Just say if you get hired at McDonald's, the conservative mind is going to want to learn how to own that McDonald's. They starting off at the lettuce, then they're going to move to the tomatoes and all that. But the conservative mind is going to want to know how to run that business and have it for itself. A liberal, and I hate to put them out there like that, would just be so satisfied of flipping burgers.
No, you know what it is, Didek? The liberal will be satisfied flipping burgers until they see the owners pull up in the Benz, and then they're going to get mad and decide that the owners owe them more. That's what the liberals do.
Exactly. Great analogy, because I wasn't thinking about that, but I've
had that personal experience where I was the boss. It wasn't a Benz, it was a Dodge Ram, a Hemi, but they were still mad.
Yeah, and they satisfied as long as they have a paycheck. They can get whatever they little snacks or whatever they can buy, and they all right. And like you said, they do complain, but the complaint is not them saying to themselves, let me get my own business, or at least let me learn how
this business operates so I can figure out a way to make my own money.
Right.
Yeah. It's like this, Didek. The conservative, even if they identify as liberals, it's always the conservative-minded person that would have a full-time job and have a side hustle. And then it's the liberal-minded person, the side hustle to make extra money. Then it's the liberal-minded person who would decide to steal from that job to make the extra money rather than having a side hustle. I think that's another dynamic of how the mindsets play out, because, and I keep telling people this, liberalism and conservatism has nothing to do with political party. It's more about your lifestyle, your way of life. It's more of a cultural thing, a mindset, how you think, how you interpret the world around you, and how you interact with the world around you. You know what I mean? Like, again, with the job thing, a conservative would think, okay, if I work for a big landscape company, if I can get me the similar equipment that I use at my job, I can go do that work elsewhere, on my time off and make extra money for myself. Where the liberal will be thinking, hey, I could steal some of this shit and make the extra money. Who's going to be the wiser?
Well, I also think it's a risk assessment mindset, right? I think the bulk of the country wants safety, right? And I see that in Joe Biden, even the way he's playing this campaign right now. He's pushing the COVID. We're like, he has this one commercial out there together, like, we're in this together. I will leave none of you behind. Like, you truly believe that Joe Biden, if there was some real deadly disease that came out, like he wouldn't leave y'all behind? Give me a break, right? And like the liberal tends to want security. That's why the liberals are pro Social Security, pro safety net, right? Where the conservative tends to be more of the risk taker, the entrepreneur, right? The want to go get it, right? Where and they play on that, but what are you going to do in society? You can't have a society without any safety nets whatsoever, right? You have to have something, right?
And that's why there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance, because if you have too much risk, then there'll be too much loss. If you have too much security, then there won't be enough achievement because there's not enough risk. So you have to be able to balance risk with security. But I'm glad you brought up the risk and security, because the conservative side, yes, they tend to take the most risk. The liberal side tends to be more complacent with security, with the right security. Now think about this: in the economy, in the private sector, who are the risk takers? The business owners, the entrepreneurs, the producers. And who are the ones seeking security? The people who are happy just collecting a paycheck because it's guaranteed. Mm-hmm. So that brings us full circle to the two different platforms, where the liberal platform is geared towards, or supposed to be geared towards, benefiting the worker, and the conservative platform is geared towards more benefiting the owner. But if you have to make a decision between which way to go, and this gets into Keynesian economics versus classical economics, demand side economics versus supply side economics. If, let's say, you focus all your attention on the well-being of the owner of the company and make sure the owner of the company gets paid before everybody else, the company might eventually fall apart, because if the owner takes his salary and doesn't pay the workers their salary, and the workers don't show up, guess what? The company doesn't function. This is why in almost every company you see, especially new startup companies, the owner never makes any money and ends up spending all his money paying his employees, because you need them to keep the machine going, to keep the business going. So with the supply side economics, if you give all the money to the owner, you're going to lose the workers. With the demand side, the Keynesian economics, if you put all the money in the hands of the workers are not risk takers, so they'll be less likely to expand the company. They'll be less productive with the money, and they'll become more complacent. So there has to be a balance where the workers get enough to satisfy their needs in relation to the workload that they're being given, and the bosses have to get enough to satisfy their needs and ensure the proper running of the company. So if a worker breaks something, the boss can pay for it. So there's got to be a balance.
You know about Reaganomics,
man. I took
trickle down.
I took microeconomics, basic economics, and macroeconomics all in my first 2 years of community college, and I got a 97%, 98%, and 99% in all three. So I'm pretty well versed in how it breaks down. But that's another story, man. We don't have to get into that.
I see you was talking about the supply. The supply, that's Reaganomics right there.
Yeah. Well, that's what they call it, but what I call it is common sense. And common sense tells you that if the boss is working, if the boss is running the company and he's not making any money, and the company is sucking everything out of him because supply side economics demands that he give all his resources to the workers, you know what he's going to do? He's going to see it more profitable for himself to shut that company down and go get a job somewhere else, working for somebody and becoming a worker himself. So it kills the incentive of the risk takers to create businesses, and then industries start to shrink and become consolidated under the major corporations. And it's that Keynesian economics that made the Walmarts and the Amazons and those other major companies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm relatively a free market guy on most issues, but like I feel like in this country we haven't used our monopoly laws properly to, Also, when you get corporations that get too big, they also stifle competition, which is not good for the free market.
I agree with that because I know up here in Wisconsin, it done turned into Spectrum. At first, it was Time Warner Cable. Spectrum is the only cable company up here in Wisconsin, and also we only got one electric and gas company, and that's a monopoly.
Right. See, and the government literally looks over the utilities, right? Like they they're like, you can be in this area, you can't be in that area. This area over here is for them. That's how it works with them. But
it should work like that because I know in Texas, they have multi-energy companies and they create a healthy competition because some of them charge by the hour. Like you can actually pay pennies on the dollar by the hour for electricity in Texas. Here in Wisconsin, go ahead.
Speaking of electricity, I'm glad you brought that up, man. Everybody on this show, start looking into hydrogen fuel cells. There's a guy called Stanley Meyer, and Stanley Meyer actually built an engine, a buggy. It was like a hydrogen spark plug where instead of putting gas in the tank and using spark plugs, you fill the gas tank with water and you completely omit the fuel injectors. You omit the fuel injectors, you put a water tank, and each plug, when the water pumps into the plug, when that electrical volt hits it to spark the spark that would spark the spark plug, it would actually activate the electrolysis plant inside the little spark plug replacement, and it would inject hydrogen and oxygen gas into the combustion chamber of the engine. So when the piston comes up on the compression stroke, when it compresses the gas itself creates a thermonuclear explosion, kind of like one of those ceramic fire things where you shove the piston in, and the fire piston, where you shove the piston in, compress the air inside a little space, and then it lights the tinder on fire. So it's a fuelless, it's a car that runs on water and it's fuelless. And when I was watching that, I thought about Bro Sanchez and the power plants and the secret behind the power plants. And he says they draw the energy directly from the earth. And he's right, but he's wrong. Because upon studying the hydrogen fuel cells, a light bulb popped off in my head. And I was like, wait a minute, isn't almost every electric power plant near water? Yes. And if it's inland, it's sitting on top of groundwater. So water is the main ingredient. So the power from the earth is actually being harnessed from the water. And seeing the level of energy output created by the amount of nitrogen and oxygen gas you can produce through electrolysis, I believe that they run their generators off hydrogen to create the electricity, and then they charge us for the electricity as if they're using fossil fuels. And here's my other thing. Have you ever seen a fuel truck go into a fucking power station?
No.
There you go. Because water is their fuel. That's why they're always near water.
That makes sense. Because if it was like industry, it would take some form of oil. Where I'm pretty sure they got to lubricate their machines, them turbines and shit like that. But some of the machines is ran off of like diesel fuel because they got a big ass diesel engine running the machines. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes all the sense in the world.
Hold on a second. Wiggleworks says, but that's still considered Earth. Sanchez is right. That's literally what I said before I made the point, Wiggleworks. I agree with you. I didn't disagree with you. I just said he's wrong about it being from the ground because he says it as if because the way he says it, he doesn't specify that it's water. He says it comes from the earth, which gave most of us the impression that it comes from the ground. But in fact, it comes from the water.
He could be on this. Are you familiar with geothermal?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that should be the wave of the future. All the houses should eventually be on geothermal,
And think about this. The geysers and the geothermal activity under the ground is hot water boiling up, right? You think that could be byproduct from the electrolysis that takes place in the groundwater, where they harvest the hydrogen from the groundwater to power the power plants, and then all that pressure that builds up from the gas has to bubble out somewhere. So these geysers act as like the bubblers in the hydrogen system.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's what hot
Just a
springs
thought.
are.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know,
That's
see,
a-
I also believe like oil. I don't believe oil is a fossil fuel. I believe oil is a natural occurring element inside the earth.
Yeah, that's what they say.
I was fortunate enough as a kid to see a hot water spring in action in Arkansas. And as a matter of fact, in Hot Springs, Arkansas, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's you see the separation between the oxygen molecules and the hydrogen, right? And that gas is reusable. You can use it and it's safe. That's the crazy killer about it.
Yeah. And that's why, and what happened to Stanley Meyer was some representatives from the energy industry from Europe came to visit him and take him out to dinner, him and his brother. And when he sat down at the table, according to his brother, he took a sip of the cranberry juice, threw the glass down, grabbed his throat and ran outside and started throwing up. And he said to his brother, "They poisoned me," and then he died. So that technology never made it to the public. And he actually had an entire buggy that he built that ran on these hydrogen injectors, and he drove it from New York, or I think he was planning to. I don't know if he actually did it, but from New York to California. But the car would drive, and he would get way more mileage than any other car on the road, way less emissions than any other car on the road, and it could run on tap water, rainwater, ocean water, fresh water. As long as it was H2O, it would run the car. And I believe that is the technology they're using at the power plants, because after Stanley Meyer was killed, the technology was never released. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in the NESARA, the National Economic Securities National Economic Security and Reform Act, in the NESARA, there is a clause that mentions that there will be the release of over 6,000 patents that have been withheld from the public, including medicine and energy, healing technology and energy production technology. Now, all of a sudden, we're hearing about the hydrogen fuel cells. We're hearing about the magnet generators. The COVID thing brought up the hydroxychloroquine and antiviral drugs and convalescent plasma, which is known to cure cancer, but we don't know about it. So for those who say Trump is with the agenda and Trump is one of the bad guys, if you look at NESARA and all the things stipulated in NESARA, which is what we would all like to see happen, and you look at the policies that Trump's been passing and the moves that he's been making, he's moving us in the direction of NESARA. And again, this is why I support him, because NESARA would be essentially returning the power of government in America back to the people. Because once we get the power to, because think about this, right? If Stanley Meyer could make a car that runs off water, an engine, you can take the engine out of a car and make it into a generator to power your house. You can actually wire up a hardwire to your car, to your alternator, and power at least one room in your house and have everything working. So imagine if you can build a fuel cell generator that runs on water. Every time it rains, you get refueled. Never have to go to the gas station again. Oil industry is dead. If the oil industry is dead, petrodollar is dead. If the petrodollar is dead, we either got to keep using fiat currency with nothing backing it, or we have to go back to a gold standard. And the reason why they're able to push the fiat currency is because they back it with oil.
I agree with that, but the main concern to me, okay, as the future comes at us, it's undeniable. Eventually, there's going to be less and less jobs over time, right? Like with AI and everything coming, like there's no doubt there's going to one day it'll be so rare that someone works, they'll probably be on a reality TV show.
Well, that's the point. But that's the point in releasing the energy technology, because if you think about it, Bebo, if you can produce your own energy The amount of money you spend every month on your light bill will literally be money in your pocket. So you won't have to work as much to maintain your standard of living. And if you're able to work just as much as you're working now, you'll actually be able to increase your standard of living.
Now,
You see
this
what I'm
is
saying?
funny that you're talking about this,
Oh,
right?
I agree with you.
What? Hold on.
And this is
hold on
what Bro
one second.
Sanchez talks about a lot. And he's real
I-
big on this. And this is why I want to put him on to Nasara and have him take a look at it.
I want to ask you this question, Citizen Man. What is
Yeah.
this Democrat agenda with this new Green Deal?
The new Green Deal is to gain control of all energy production. And the
I know
scam, the scam is to say the energy that our energy consumption is producing this toxic gas called carbon dioxide, even though we're all carbon-based life forms. Our energy consumption is producing this toxic gas called carbon dioxide that's killing the earth and eventually will kill us. So in order to save the earth and save us, we have to turn over control of energy consumption to the government, to them, so they get to tell us how much energy we get to use and when we get to use it and how much it's going to cost. So it's a power play to seize control of the energy industry, because once they seize control of the energy industry, they basically control everything else. Every industry uses energy.
So, do you think he was killed because of that?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah, that's what it
because
sounds like.
the hydrogen fuel cell technology was going to put the oil companies out of business the same way the railroads and the steam engine put horse and buggies out of business.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's
A
why
lot
they
of
killed
people don't know that. A lot of people don't. That's the reason why you don't see no horses in service. But go ahead. That is so funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh shit, that is
And
so funny.
DLR 978 in the chat says, even if I didn't pay my electric bill for a year, I'd only have an extra $2,000 max per year. Well, DLR, check this out, right? Let's say your neighbors are paying the same amount in their electric bills and you're able to build a generator, because the amount of energy output can power more than just a house and more than just one little engine, just on water. So imagine if you can power every house on your street. Guess what? You just became the power company. And now everybody has to pay you for the electricity you provide, and they no longer have to pay the big power company. So if they stop paying the big power company and the big power company cuts them off with the main grid, they now tie into your system. You charge them a fraction of what they were paying the power company. And guess what? You're now the man. You now run shit. Now your standard of living changes. You see, so there's expansion. Also, if you know about this technology and other people don't, you can also earn revenue teaching them about that technology and helping them gain independence. If there's one thing in the world that people will pay for, they will pay for the ability to never have to pay again. And teaching them how to build their own energy supply or supply their own energy and never have to pay an electric bill again, they will happily pay you to do that.
Yep, that makes sense.
Well, DLR, the neighbors would be able to generate the electricity the same as you. They would have the capability to generate the electricity the same as you. But will they have the effort, ability, the effort, the skill, the time, the knowledge? No. It's like this. My landscape company, my main staple was lawn service. Anybody can buy a lawnmower and cut their own lawn, but not everybody was doing it, so they were paying me to do it. Apply that concept.
You a smart man, Citizen Man.
See,
I
but
remember last time we talked, I questioned you on what your knowledge was on politics. And I knew you was hiding.
No, you know what? It wasn't that I was hiding, bro. You know what it was? Enough events hadn't occurred to allow me to adequately justify what I was saying. Now, when I tell you, you can look at the real world and see it, just like the Democrat Party being the party for bums and the bums burning down the businesses owned by the producers. I said that a year ago on Bro Sanchez's show, that the people that are being kept in poverty are going to drag the producers down when we were talking about the open borders. Because when I said you're bringing in poor people from the third world to live on the backs of the producers here, which means the producers are going to have less for themselves, which means you're going to create more poor people. Which is what the Democratic Party wants, because poor people are more easily controlled. You know, so I've been
Mhm.
saying this forever. It's just, again, enough hasn't happened for people to see it. People can't
Right.
be told the truth. They have to be shown the truth. So now that you've
Yeah.
been shown, all I have to do is tell you again and remind you. And now you can look at it and be like, you know what? This guy's got a point.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you know, it was distorted. And I thought, you know, to say the least, because he's not politically aware, I'll say that. And I thought, you know, two peas in the pod, and that was my fault. It was a gross negligence on my end of
Nah.
assuming that you didn't know nothing about politics.
Nah, well, you
But
see,
I
you
see-
crossed paths with me. You crossed paths with me on Bro Sanchez's show. We were talking about other things other than politics. So I never really got an opportunity to share my knowledge. You know what I'm saying? But now that I'm on my platform and I can do that, now you get to know me a little better. So we'll continue.
Right,
I didn't mean
yeah.
to cut you off. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's about it. It was like shit. Your research and development on politics is sharp, and I grossly underestimated you, but you have proved me wrong. I was listening to your strains for about ever since then. You know, it's every once in a while, because sometimes I be on Sanchez and I be
Yeah.
arguing, you be on, and I be on on his show, so I miss your show. But with that
Yeah.
being said, for the times that I have seen your show, you are on point politically. You are totally on point. And I underestimated you. I was like, this dude know what the hell he talking about in this politics. I said, yeah, that's that Sanchez shit. Your message will get distorted
Yes.
in his show,
Yes.
even though it's like
Like
go
you remember
ahead.
when, I don't know if you were watching the last time I was on there. I think it was either yesterday or the day before. And Information Man came on the show. And shout out to Information Man. But when he was, you know, formulating his points to counter my points, he would state my points and then state his counterpoint. But in stating my point, it was, you know, a lot of times he would mischaracterize what I said and then start arguing against something I didn't even say. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's a big problem that causes contention, because then the person whose words are being mischaracterized to get mad, be like, man, I didn't fucking say that. You arguing against some shit I didn't even say. And
Right.
in certain circles, it's a straw man tactic used by certain professionals to distort the message and throw people off. And other times when it happens, it just happens purely out of a misunderstanding and a lack of interest in seeking correction from the person they're misquoting. Like when Sanchez says my point before he argues against it, and I try to stop him, and I have to stop him and talk over him and say, hey, that's not what I said, bro. This is what I said. And then he's like, man, you gonna let me talk? You keep talking over me. And then he gets
Right.
mad because I'm correcting what he said. Because if I make a point and somebody distorts my point and starts arguing against my distorted point, those people were just now misinformed and misguided and misled. And that's
Right.
what we don't want.
I like Sanchez, man. He's a cool dude, but like, I've never spoke with him. But like, I've watched him for a little bit now, and I still don't what's his religious philosophy?
He has no religion. He really thinks he's like one of those. He believes in a creator, in a supernatural creator. He believes in supernatural realms, like spiritual realms. He believes in reincarnation. He believes in
It sounds like sort of new age, like sort of.
But
it's
yeah,
kind
but this is-
of well, they call it new age, but it's more, to tell you the truth, Bebo, and he is right about this. It's more of ancient spirituality before the organized religions came around, where people kind of just interpreted the natural world around them and understood that something greater than us put us here, and we all have a purpose here.
Yeah,
Like
you lean towards that direction. Too.
yeah, I kind of do. I kind of do, because I find less controversy and less contradictions in that school of thought. Like everything tends to line up a little more logically, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Not to say that in the religious in the mainstream religions it's all contradictions or nothing like that, but there are instances where there's too much room for disagreement in those, and there's less, and it creates less unity. Like, think about it. Christians all read the same Bible, but then there's 1,000 different denominations.
Oh, yeah.
And I see that. I see something wrong with that there. That means the text that they go by is it's not specific enough, and it's so open to interpretation that it leaves room for so many different interpretations that nobody can ever agree on it. Now, some would argue and say that was done on purpose to create division, and some would argue and say, well, that's because we're all wrong and this is what it really says. But then that's another division. But when it comes to like looking at the laws of nature and how nature interacts with itself and how we are to interact with nature, it tends to make sense. Like, think about this, right? In Sanchez's belief, he says we shouldn't eat animals because that's not the way the creator designed the world. Plants are our only source of food, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, he kind of has a point, because when plants reproduce, it doesn't take a male and a female plant to come together and reproduce a third plant. Plants produce male and female parts within themselves, and they reproduce.
Some plants do, Nate. Some plants do.
True. But for the most part, flowering plants, which would be the fruit plants, they reproduce within themselves. So they don't need a mate to reproduce. But humans and animals are the same in the sense that there's males, we're split into males, and we're split into females. So it takes a male and a female to mate to create an offspring. So he sees the animals as kind of like our brothers and sisters. They just speak a different language and live a different lifestyle. And the plants would be the food source. You see what I'm saying? And logic, and if you think about it logically, it does make sense, whether you agree with it or not.
Well, this reminds me of when we were talking and you mentioned the pre-dynastic period where the hunters went out and they
started eating meat and made it part of the
I have an
culture.
argument with that, because my profession is a horticulturist, and I have to know what flowers pollinate, which insects have to pollinate the plant, and for the most part, they do have a trait to hermaphrodite, but they pro-choose their sex. It's like this. This is how,
like weed plants, the female plants grow the buds and the male plants don't.
I mean, in essence, when you have a complete male plant, but it can morph, that's what I call it, but it can turn into a herm where you actually have seeds inside your bud, right? And that's where they call a feminized plant, where the seed can actually keep producing that type of marijuana. Okay, like in ornaments, right? Like the touch-me-nots, these are flowers, right? They need the bumblebee to pollinize, or they'll die off. They are annuals. They're not perennial. So in order for that plant to keep coming back, the bee has to pollinate. And that's what, our ecosystem, to say the least. This is what they were saying about it being out of whack, the missing bees or whatever, because a lot of plant life, especially like in Brazil, things like that, they need that bee to pollinate some of those exotic plants.
And you know how the bees pollinate it? Because sometimes the flowers, they would self-pollinate the flowers as well, and then spread the pollen from flower to flower. But the difference between those plants and humans in terms of reproduction is you can also clone those plants without the bees, without the help of the bees. You can still clone them, take sections of them, and create new life from them. But you can't do that with people or with animals, or at least not as far as we know.
You know what? They took
but I'm pretty sure they've made it to that point. But in terms of public knowledge,
but hypothetically, without carbon, there is no life. Everything is carbon, right?
Yes.
Okay, everything has some carbon, no matter what. Now, why can't we just, like, you talked about the eating of animals. In the Bible, it actually says at one time that the man didn't eat the animals.
And with that, I have a big argument with that too, about the carbon.
What about
I would put it to you like this: 90 95% is carbon bond, but you do got hydrogen bonds that don't have nothing to do with carbon, and it's inorganic. And it's
Yeah,
the
but
most
But if it's inorganic, we're talking about life forms.
scientifically, all life needs at least 1 part carbon. Every
no,
life. What?
no. I'm going to explain. The most important, the most abundant resource that we need in order for us to sustain life is inorganic. And that's water. Don't have no carbon in it. And
Yeah,
that is a living and
but
breathing
water
organism.
in itself is not living, right?
Yes, it is.
Well,
Yes, it is.
some would argue that it is living, but I would say it's not living because it doesn't carry out functions like normal living creatures. It doesn't eat. It doesn't shit. It doesn't live, and it doesn't die, so it can't be living.
But here's my point. In the Bible,
Actually, it does. It does. It's another scientific explanation for it. They call it evaporation. They call it.
Well, that's just it changing the state, but it's still
no.
water.
Listen. It's called. It start with an S. Is at the tip of my tongue. Solvents. There it is. It acts as a solvent. All hydrogen products. In order for you to even get an adhesive, you need that hydrogen bond. It's the most, like I said, it's the most abundant living organism on this planet that we need the most, and it is not carbon based. It's inorganic.
well, I know there's the 5 elements you need. You need carbon.
The reason why I say that is because in my line of business, I have to sell that because most people say, "Can I get organic? Can I have organic? Can I have organic?" That is a misnomer. That organic is a misnomer because to even grow that, to call it organic, you need the most abundant compound that is inorganic, which is water. And people have to understand that because when it's like, even when I was trying to explain this to Sanchez about the concept of God and things of that nature and where he's coming from, it's hard to deny the actual pertinent facts that's in front of you, things that make you go, yes.
But Didac, I think you contradicted yourself there because a second ago you said water was living, but then you call it inorganic. So how can it be inorganic and living at the same time? I thought all living things were organic.
No, it's
so
not.
You would either have to admit the water is not living, thus it's inorganic, or you'd have to say it's organic, thus it's living. Wouldn't that be the case?
No, that's the misnomer. The word organic is the misnomer because we assume everything living to be totally organic. Yes. And for that to live, you need the most abundant compound in the world that is inorganic in order for you to even call yourself an organic being, right? Mm-hmm. A human being can live longer without food than they can with water, right?
Without water, you're right.
That abundance of that water that you need in order for you to survive is an inorganic, and what it does, it triggers everything that's organic in you to come alive, just like our carbon-based plants, because all the plants are carbon-based, right?
Hey, Didac.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but DLR, I think he's got a disagreement with you. He said Didac is very confused. Water's ability to wash, erode, act as a solvent does not mean it's alive. So what do you say to that?
This is not what I say to that.
So your argument would be, yes, it is.
Yeah, of course it is, because in order for salts, in order for any kind of, like, I'm gonna call them INEs, the INEs, or the in chemistry. This is in chemistry. All those like tropipamines and clacamines and saltamines and all that stuff, in order for that to even activate, It needs a solvent. And that solvent has to be alive. That's the reason why they say never mix acids
Well,
with
then
base.
again, but then you also got to consider what the definition, what you would define as alive. Because if what you define as alive is something having a function within the organic structure, then I guess you would be correct. But what we define as alive is something that's sentient, reproduces.
Like that's what I'm trying to tell you. It can reproduce.
Water,
now,
but check this out. This is going to blow you guys' mind. How about this? Water is energy, because energy cannot be created or destroyed. Show me the last person that created or destroyed water. I'll wait.
That's exactly it. And that's what I'm going to get to the crux of that and explain how water in itself can recreate in what they call in science is called evaporation, right? It can kill itself in that same.
But Didac, that's not killing it though, because it's still H2O. It still maintains its chemical structure. So even if it changes form, it's still water. Like me, I could stand up straight or I could curl into a ball. I change form, but I'm still me.
Okay, the element that can kill water is heat. All right. It evaporates, but it does not come back because of the pressure that's in the air. Remember, we had all these talks about pressure, air pressure, and things of that nature. But the heat, it would kill the vapors because the heat pressure is so hard on it that it would kill it. So yeah,
But by kill it, what do you mean kill it? Because if you put heat to vapor, all that's going to make the vapor do is expand further and faster. That's it. But the water doesn't go away. The moisture remains in the air. And that water and that air can still, that moisture can still be recondensed back into liquid water. So it's not dead because you can bring the water back. Things that die can't be brought back to life. You know what I'm saying? Death is supposed to be a permanent state. So if you can, quote unquote, kill the water by turning it into vapor and superheating the vapor, yet you can still recollect the vapor and recondense it back into water, you just brought it back to life, which defies the rules of death. So you didn't kill it. It's not dead. I say it's energy where you just change the form.
I've been looking it up. The 4 elements you need to be considered a living organism is you need oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen minimum. And then sulfur is a common 5th element, but you need them 4 minimum to be considered living. Oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. And H2O just has 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen.
1 oxygen. So H2O has 2 of the 4 elements, which means it's not living. It's just a building block. Then it could be considered energy then, because living things, what separates living things from inanimate things is the ability to, or the ability to release energy.
It does all that.
To consume and release energy.
You just got finished talking about the hydrogen generator. It does produce energy.
Right.
But it has to go through a process in order to produce that energy. Just like when you drink the water, it has to go through a digestive process in order to feed the carbon that you are made of. But the most abundant element that we need in order to sustain our lives is inorganic. So the question is everything carbon-based that is living? Absolutely not, because water is a living organism.
Okay.
You just got finished.
Let me stop you there. So your argument for saying that everything living isn't carbon-based is to include water into the category of what's living. So the only living thing that exists on Earth that's not carbon-based is water. That's what I'm taking from what you're saying. Am I correct?
Yes. That what you would consider organic. The word organic in itself
refers to living.
It's synonymous with a living thing.
Well, actually, the word organic is actually in reference to just that it comes from nature and wasn't created by man.
Okay, to say the least.
Water would be organic, but dead leaves are organic too, but they're not alive, and you could change the form of those. Dead grass, cows eat that. It's called hay. They get energy from that.
They would lose their oxygen first, usually the plant as it's dying, and then slowly the hydrogen and nitrogen would be, as it decays, would go away.
Well, I think this is where you're going to be having an argument with science and what they agreed on. I'm just saying, because they consider water to be inorganic. And with that being said, that is the most abundant organism on this planet that we need to sustain life. Okay, you can do this also with water to know that it's living. It can, it would take, if water just floated in the air, it didn't have nothing to attach itself to, right? No other base, like, because when he was mentioning the 4 elements, actually is a little bit more. It's called C. Hopkins Cafe is mighty good. And what that means is C is for carbon, H is for hydrogen, O is for oxygen, P is for potassium, P is for phosphorus, K is for potassium, N is for nitrogen, Ca is for calcium, Fe is for iron. All right. And those elements, those are all the elements that makes up living things. That's all, right. Practically all of them. That's macro. When you start getting into micro, which is magnesiums and things of that
right.
nature.
No, I didn't say there wasn't more elements in living organisms. It's just saying that's the 4 minimum.
Right. Because what I'm saying is this: out of those, you have many combinations, because some bonds are not carbon bonds. Some bonds are hydrogen. Like your solvents, them are hydrogen bonds. And what I was getting back to the question about.
Yeah, you're trying to prove that water is living, but I don't think you're really making that case, bro.
It is living, for the simple fact that
I think I make a better case about water being energy than it being living, because you can't create or destroy it. You just can't.
Sure you can. You can create water. Okay, buy a brand new air conditioner. Hold on.
That's not creating it. That's that's condensing it. That's changing it from vapor
you
to
are
water.
Creating it. You are creating it.
No, you're not, Didek. I mean, creating water.
Yes, you are. You are taking hold on. You are taking inanimate objects that are dead. Copper is dead. That's a dead inanimate object. Your compressor, those are dead inanimate objects. Only thing that's rolling through that thing that is alive, that is electricity. But like you said, it condenses. You are creating water. The person who created that air conditioner, it was pushing off water, condensed water, or
but it's condensing. Exactly. You just said the word condensed water. That means the water that's in the air in the form of vapor is just being changed, bro. So you're not creating the water. You're just harnessing the water like energy. We can't create the energy, but we can harness the energy and put it into a battery or use the energy to run machinery, but we're not creating the energy. We're just harnessing it. You see what I'm saying?
You're not harnessing, you actually creating it, because just have copper by itself and see if you get any water. You won't get no water.
That's against the basic laws of the universe. Like you can't create
No. You have to start putting things together in order
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like you have to like create a device that can convert the vapors in the air into liquid water. So technically you're right in the terms of you're creating liquid, but you're not creating water in the sense of creating H2O. You're already using you're already collecting H2O that exists in a gaseous form and turning it into liquid. So you're creating liquid, but you're not creating water per se.
Right.
Okay, now
It's
far
like if
as
I
the,
squeezed a sponge, I didn't make water. The water was in there. The water just came out.
no. Far as what you're talking about, like the oxygen atom, the hydrogen atom, into splitting into two. No, you don't create that. That in itself, in its essence, is already here in forms of gas, solids, liquids. It's
Same thing
already
with
here.
water. It's the
Hold on,
same
no, no,
thing.
no,
The
no,
same thing
no.
applies to water, bro. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Oh, this is what I know. But you cannot take a piece of copper, put it in the air, and start dripping water. You have
That
to.
depends on the temperature of that copper. If you make it cold, it will.
If
I
we
mean,
could create water, then essentially we could create a flood, right?
that's what I'm trying to explain to you. You have to change certain things. That's the reason why I was getting back to the crux with the water. If water is touching an inanimate object long enough, it can create a fungi. That fungi is a living thing. And then you can actually create an oasis with that, where you actually have living, breathing spring water. I don't know if have y'all ever drunk out of a spring. On the edges of the spring, it's like a coral reef. It's just like that. It's like a lot of fungi on the end of it. You'll see-through fucking shit moving in the water. It's like they like translucent and shit moving in the water. The water is perfectly okay for you to drink.
Hey,
That
hold that thought,
water
Didac. Hold
created
that thought, Didac.
that water. That's what the water
Hold on,
created.
somebody in the chat. Somebody in the
okay.
chat, real quick. Hey, DLR, if you want to jump on the panel, bro, I got the StreamYards link in the chat because you do make a good point. He said, if water is energy, okay, he says, how does my point of water doesn't move unless some force acts upon it stack up against Citizen Man's theory of water equals energy? If water is energy, it wouldn't need some other force to move it. And DLR, you're right in the sense that water doesn't need some other force to move it, but if water is contained like behind a dam, it doesn't take a force to move it. All you have to do is remove that barrier that's containing that force, and all that energy is released in the form of a flood. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with you on that, but since we're getting some disagreements in the chat, I really would like you guys to come on the panel and actually say it so I don't have to keep interrupting the guys who are speaking. So I'm dropping the link. And you guys come on.
I had no clue this conversation was going to go in this direction.
Yeah, I know. I fucked up talking about the energy because we're on 3 hours, and I usually don't like to go longer than 3 hours, but I can put in another 30 minutes to 3.5 hours, and then we're gonna have to call it.
Yeah, if you want.
And I want to make room for any other person that wants to come on. DLR says my internet connection is bad, not good to be on the panel. Sorry. That's all good, man. That's all good. And conspiracy box says my phone's jacked up, can't join. Damn.
But my point, Didac, okay, you said fungi can grow when water has contact with something for so long. Wouldn't that water then be touching a carbon?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it will. Yes.
Right. So it needs that carbon to create. It basically needs to touch something with carbon and nitrogen. Then you can create life.
That's exactly it. But no, it's to create life in terms of what we consider carbon base as a life form, what we know as a life form as carbon base, to say the least, because water is tangible. We can touch it. You can feel it. It has a mass. It has all that good stuff that comes along with it. So does a carbon base. But you got like a rock. Most scientists say rocks are not living. Those are inanimate objects. They don't live, right? But if you add water to that rock would start creating fungus, a living object on it. In order for that to work, yes, you need a carbon-based object, but it don't have to be per se living. because they consider some things not living, like a piece of plastic, right? If I'm trying to, because I play with a lot of water, a lot of still water at that too. And I done seen metal sit in water, and I seen a lot of gook form around that water, and that water is toxic, of course. But what I have seen take place in chemistry, to say the least, is something I've seen corrosion in real time. A lot of people have, like with their car batteries, but that's a different corrosion. I'm talking about with water.
Right.
I done seen
Oxidation, rust. Rust,
seen-
water, hard water spots, that black mold that grows in your driveway that's got to
Exactly.
get pressure washed. Yeah, I know what you mean. But again, Didek, that still doesn't prove that water is alive. That's what the crux of the debate is. Is water living? I say
yes,
it's energy.
that's what proves it.
No, because
Okay,
That
the
it
water,
helps-
the
that-
water
that
has
it
got to
helps.
come into contact with some type of
Now
carbon
check this out. Check
and
this out.
nitrogen.
Okay, check this out. Take an inanimate object that you consider that won't have no.
It's inanimate, Didek. You keep saying
Oh, you
inanimate.
know, well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know
Sometimes I
what you mean,
fumble
but
my
just for
words.
just for the listeners that may misunderstand what you're saying, it's inanimate. Like animate, but put in at the beginning of it.
Okay,
Yeah, you'll get
but
it.
with that, with that.
No, I'm saying
being
this is
said,
broadcasting, bro. So people are listening, and you don't want to say, you say the wrong word and you mean a different word. It's going to change the entire meaning of what you're saying. So just to avoid that misunderstanding, it's inanimate. Not trying to be rude.
Okay, no. I understand. I totally understand. With that being said, you take two inanimate objects, you put them together, you ain't gonna get shit. You
True.
take an inanimate object, which is carbon based, and you put water on it, it will come alive. Same thing with two carbon base that has nitrogen and oxygen in it. And 9 times out of 10, meaning hydrogen and oxygen, and 9 times out of 10, it's in what we call a water molecule. Now, I do a lot of grafting, meaning that I know how to graft plum trees to an apple tree, right? A lot
Yep.
and that takes place with two carbon-based objects. You take a
Two living
stick-
things.
Right. In order for that to take place, they need the most abundant molecule in our planet, which is called water, in order for that to even work, or it won't work. Try not feeding that plant no water and see what happens. Don't drink no water for 21 days and see what happens. You can eat
I agree. You need water for life. I agree with that. But I don't know if I agree if water is living.
Hey guys, hang on a
Yes,
second.
it's living.
Hang on.
It's okay.
Hey, guys,
I'll put
hang
it
on,
to you
hang-
like this:
Hang on one second.
water is not.
I gotta go back
meat.
to the chat again.
Water is.
I gotta go back to the chat again, right before you go. What you call it?
Mhm.
Didek, sorry. 3% salute, aka Sarah. She kind of threw me off. She said I have a crush on Citizen Man, and I just want to say, Sarah, I appreciate it, but don't do it. I already have 2 kids by 2 different women, and all you're doing is setting yourself up to be my 3rd baby mama. Don't do it. Got love for you though. Go ahead, Didek. You got it, bro.
Oh yeah, but the point I was making is this: with the water, it's like how I'm gonna put his name up in here, Sanchez. Dead meat, right? Dead
Yeah.
meat. You eating something dead, right? But in its pure essence, even it being dead, it still holds a part of a moisture. It got moisture in it. With that moisture, that compound, the major part of that compound is 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. Did I say that right? Or 2 parts oxygen, 1 part hydrogen? No, that's peroxide. Anyway, it's water that's inside that, but it got other solvents in it like blood or plasma and shit like that. And people like I'm probably saying this wrong. The roux of the juice of this shit, the root, whatever the hell they call that. It got blood in it or whatever the case may be. But most of that compound makes up of water. It does. And with that being said, to make an illustration towards meat is alive, even though it's dead, but it's still alive because we eat it to sustain, right?
Well,
Even
just
though,
because it contains energy doesn't
hold
mean
on,
it's
hold on.
alive,
No,
man.
the reason why I'm making an example out of meat is because if I go to vegetables, it would be too obvious. That would be too obvious because that's a living organism. But in
Right.
order for that to even live, it needs a whole shitload of water. So I'm trying to think of something that's dead. Even in its death, it still got a whole lot of water in it. Water is not dead. Water is a living object. In order for you to eat that meat, it got to have some type of water in it. Or you'll be eating bark. And even if you eating bark, I mean, eventually, if you chew down on it hard enough, you'll get a sap out of that shit or something like that. But think of the most driest shit in the world and trying to eat it, like cinnamon. It don't have no moisture in it. Even salt, some salts got moisture in it because they'll put MSG in it just to draw the moisture out. Because with real salt, if you let it sit, it'll clump up. The reason why it's clumping up because it's moist. It's moist in there. It got a little bit of moisture in there. But with that being said, for all our foods that we eat, a lot of it is water. A lot of it is water. Even
But
though
it still doesn't mean that water is alive, bro.
yes, it is.
I mean, if that's what you
exactly, so
if that's what you believe, then that's cool. But
no, that's what I know.
it's more.
You cannot. No human being on this planet cannot eat anything that's dead to sustain life.
But
Even
we do.
No, that's the reason why I even brought up meat.
Because to your example
Okay.
with meat, right? Let me counter with this. To your example with meat, you say the meat is alive even though the animal is dead. But I would argue and say the meat simply contains energy that our bodies consume and use. You know what I'm saying?
With that being said, energy has to be moving and bouncing. Something
Not
has to be.
necessarily. Energy can be contained and then released as well.
All right. Hypothetically, you got a piece of meat. He said it's alive even though it's dead, right? Okay. If I set that meat there, the meat is going to eventually lose all water eventually, right?
Mhm.
Well, why is that?
Because it's going through a process of
Because it's dead.
It's going through a process of dehydration.
Correct. Right. Right. Because it's dead.
No, it's just that's how water operates when it goes into evaporation. I think it's something with the air and the temperature and things of that nature. I know it, but if it's tedious, but I know it. But with that being said, that evaporation process is the same thing as a dehydration process. Some meats, some cultures naturally hang their meat without absolutely no aid and abetting in a dehydration process, and it might take them 6 months.
Yeah, and before they
dehydrate.
eat it, they rehydrate it before they eat it.
And guess what? Kills the molecule water quicker than it would if you would naturally let it go. Heat. That's the reason why dehydrators push out a lot of heat. When you
because the heat turns the water into steam. It changes the physical structure of the water, so the steam then rises and exits the meat. That's all it does. It doesn't mean the water is alive. It just means it changes form.
no,
Like you can take a flat piece of paper and crumple it up and make it into a ball. It doesn't mean that paper is alive. It just means it changed form. You could take the same piece of paper, rip it up into a million pieces. Doesn't mean it's alive. It just means it changed form. And in order to change form, a process has to occur. Just like in order for water to evaporate, the temperature has to increase.
Right. if the temperature increases, it causes the air to get dense because hot air, no, actually cold air is more denser than hot air because cold air can freeze the molecule and keep it in its actual state, but it's frozen. Unlike hot air, it's destroying it. It's actually splitting the hydrogen from the oxygen. That's when you got a hydrogen generator. Hold on. When you got a hydrogen generator, the electricity is doing the same thing the heat is doing. It's separating hydrogen from oxygen. That's what the heat does. And it's called evaporation, but in essence, that is dead. It's dead. It won't produce no more water after it went through that process, unless, like you said, you contain it, right?
Nah.
And no, you do have to contain it. That's the reason why.
No, I wasn't countering you. I just saw something interesting in the chat. But finish your point, and then I'll read Conspiracy Box's comment.
Go ahead.
Okay, he says, Didac, water retains memory, but it does not think. It carries energy, but does not require it to exist. It is a base catalyst. That's very interesting.
Not at all.
And what you were mentioning, okay, you're basically you're comparing like the atomic level to the element, right? Right, where when you have an atom, you have your protons, your neutrons, and your electrons, right? Where when you have an element, it is a mixture of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand exactly what you're saying.
Okay, so comparing something on the okay, phosphorus is the element that you need for bonding, right? Okay, you have at one time we had single cell organisms, then we went to duopoly, right? Dual cell, and then the Trinity. And some people believe that's where the whole aspects of life and everything came from, right? And
right,
you know, so you can't compare an element to everything's different atomically. You get what I'm saying? Every element.
of course, every element is different, but H2O is H2O. Unless you're playing with heavy water, which is an isotope, or even if you making hydrogen peroxide. But the major two elements that got to come together is hydrogen and oxygen. With that is the most abundant resource that we have on this planet to sustain it. Of course, when you're talking about other elements like helium, right? Because they said that's one of the biggest, most abundant elements that we got. Helium, hydrogen, it's a few other gases out there. But the
nitrogen.
The gases, according to science, super duper in terms of mass, they outweigh water. We got way more gas than we do with water, right? And we do need gas to fill our lungs up, right? We need that gas to push and activate, right? Just like how a piston needs the gas and it explodes and it pushes the rod up and the piston head moves and all that due to the combustion. We need the same thing with the breathing and the water. The water act as a catalyst to that combustion. And it also, like he said, with the catalyst, it acts as that, but it's alive. It has to be alive in order to even act as a catalyst.
Okay, but but let's say we took away carbon, what would there be?
You will have a lot of liquid-based hydrogen bonding going on, a lot of flexing, a lot of things without angles.
But would it be life?
Huh?
It wouldn't be life. It would just be gases and vapors.
No. You will have a bond. You will have a hydrogen bond. it won't be just straight gas. You'll have a liquid. You won't have no solid, but you'll definitely have liquids that can act as a solid.
Yeah.
That's if we.
But you would consider consider that life?
Hell no, I wouldn't consider that life. But I'm just telling you, as a carbon-based person, when they say organic, that is overrated, because organic is not what it's a selling point, especially those who grow who's off into farming. Like, I got a little hobby farm. Organic is a coin phrase word by farmers to get people to buy more vegetables where they know that.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And they know the most abundant resource that they use is inorganic. That's the kicker about that. And
yeah, I think that organic comes across to people as like not using spray chemicals and stuff. That's what I think.
That's how they try to coin phrase that. But that's what I'm trying to tell you. That's a misnomer. And in that misnomer, would people say living things are organic? And science, any scientist will tell you the most abundant resource that we know is inorganic. And if there's an opposite of inorganic for organic being alive, you're going to say water is dead, but water is not dead. Water is alive. It's a misnomer, because the hydrogen bond is just what it is. It's not a carbon bond. That's what separates the two. It separates the two.
How about this? How about we settle on this? Water can exist in both states, dead and alive. Stagnant water would be dead water. Running water would be live water. Because when you're dead, what happens to a dead body? All types of critters get in there and start decomposing and consuming it, right? What happens in stagnant water? All types of critters get in there and start fouling the water. What happens in running water? Not many critters can survive in running water. So running water would be considered alive and still water would be considered dead. So maybe we're both right and we just reached a compromise. It's politics for your ass.
Well, see, my thing is, like, I don't think there's any water that is not in some way, shape, or form in touch with some type of carbon, right? Like if there's any water touching the earth, it's touching carbon.
Yes, it is touching carbon. So it's not stagnated. It's only stagnated water.
I'm not a scientist, so
no. Only water that is stagnated is water in the air, and even with that, it's falling. So it ain't even stagnated. Okay, check this out. Right, there's a product out there that does the similar thing as a hydrogen generator, but they make it for hydroponic growers, right? And what it does the same thing. It separates the hydrogen from the oxygen, but it puts way more oxygen molecules inside your root system when you're doing hydroponic, right? There are many other ways to oxidize your water. One of them is a drip system, where you just take some water and pour it and just let it keep pouring, but you got to have something to keep circulating that pour. As that water keep hitting, as the water collides with each other, it creates more oxygen inside the water because it's going through a process. It's going through a process where it's hitting each other. It's causing they call it nucleoblast. Trust me, I know what I'm saying. It's called a nucleoblast. And what it's doing is separating the hydrogen from the oxygen, putting more oxygen inside the water. It's only 12%. That's it. Now, I myself use a water pump or air pump. That's what I do to oxidize my water. And that only puts like 23% of oxygen in the water. But what I'm trying to tell you is this: water is never stagnant. It's never that he just got finished explaining it. Now, this is how water can be stagnant because I was trying to get to this point. Another object.
But wait,
is
you just
plastic,
wait.
right?
Before you
Hold on.
before you move on to that point, you just said water can never be stagnant, and then you immediately said this is how water can be stagnant. So which
No,
one is it,
because
man?
I'm trying to tell you, because if you put water in a plastic bucket, and
Mhm.
just sat it there, then that's water is stagnant. Because the object that is sitting on is, what's the word I messed up on?
Inanimate.
Yeah, it's inanimate.
Okay, so what about like a retention pond with nasty fetid water because it's not the water has nowhere to go and it just stays there till it becomes infested with critters? Would that not be considered stagnant water since it's not moving?
Okay, now with that being said, no, it's not stagnant water. Especially if it's mosquitoes and all kind of other stuff that's living up in there, right? Now, if it's a man, but well, most ponds are man-made, but if they lace the bottom of the pond with an inanimate object, like how you do a swimming pool,
Yeah.
right?
Then that would count as stagnant. So you're saying as long as the water is in contact with the ground, like in existing in nature rather than in a synthetic container, it is not considered stagnant. I don't think I could agree with that. I think stagnation just refers to whether there's constant motion or not.
Yeah, energy movement.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And even though there's critters in the water and they might be making ripples, making splashes, the water's in direct contact with the ground. So any vibrations in the ground might shake the water. That body of water still remains.
Are y'all familiar on how liquor is made?
Distilling?
Yeah, distillation. Yeah.
There you go. No, not distillation. Fermentation. Fermenting.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's the first step. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. Fermenting takes water to happen.
Mm-hmm.
All those objects, they live in, but the yeast ain't even activated. The sugar is not even activated. Nothing is activated. So it almost becomes inanimate. But it's not, because it's carbon based. And because it's being carbon based, it has that ability to have life. But in order for it to have life, it has to touch that hydrogen and that oxygen molecule.
Oh, I agree with you, but it needs carbon. You just said it yourself. so water on its own don't have carbon.
No, of course not. Of course not.
So, see, hydrogen, if you look at the periodic table, right, in school, you remember, like, you see there's still a lot of elements that we haven't even discovered. Like, they have a bunch of them, like, blank, right? Like, my question is, like, how do they know, like that these spots are, how do you know something hasn't been discovered?
That's the beautiful thing about science. That is the most beautiful thing about science.
But did you guys learn that same thing in the periodic table, where it's all them blank spots are like elements that have not been discovered?
Because they were still discovering elements when I was in high school, and that was way back in the 90s.
Yeah. So I just don't get, like, how they know how many blank spots there are and stuff. Like, how do they? I don't know, man. Dude, life is deep, and the thing is, sometimes we don't have all the answers, and that's the thing. No one likes to just say, "I don't know" anymore.
Yeah.
Well, listen, guys, we got 8 minutes left before I have to close out at 3.5 hour mark. So,
it was fun.
Yeah, it definitely was. It really took a different turn that I was not expecting, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure the audience enjoyed it too. You guys want to just say your last piece before you close out? Plug your channel or your Instagram or whatever social media you want to plug, and do what you got to do. Bebo, I know you got a channel. Your channel is called Disavowed Podcast. So anybody wants to support Bebo, go ahead and feel free to do so. I think I gave you a wrench already, so you can drop your link in the chat if you want to. And while you're doing that, I guess I'll give Didac the floor, let him close out, and then you can jump back in and close out, Bebo. So Didac, go ahead, brother.
Okay, yeah. I myself, I'm brand new to the world, so no, I don't got any like social media pages, things of that nature. I'm still working on that. Actually, I want to get it done professionally. I want to go to a tech guy and get this shit done right. But nonetheless, yeah, I enjoyed myself. I am myself. I like to say that I do my due diligence in politics. I agree with Citizen Man at least about 85% of the time on politics.
And that's good enough for me.
And it was great talking to you today. I couldn't get this information across on another channel, and it's crazy because it's like I met you in total disagreement with you, and we had a cordial conversation. And I'm
because we even bumped heads over here.
Yeah. So it exists in me, people, that I can have a decent conversation with people because they say I'm the cutoff king and all this. I be cutting people off, and I don't understand that. But yeah, that's me all in a nutshell. So I just look forward to being on your panel, man, or your platform whenever you open up.
Yeah, I don't do these shows very often, but every time I do, we do have a damn good time. And I appreciate you coming on, man, and I appreciate you, speaking your piece and standing your ground and holding your position, man, and defending your answer, because that's tonight's show. Defend your answer, and you, even though some may agree, some may disagree, you defended your answer and you did what you came to do, brother. So shout out to you, Bebo.
Thank you, Citizen Man. And
yes,
I'll see you next time.
All right.
Peace.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice meeting you too, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Well, first I'd like to thank you for opening your platform to a degenerate like myself.
Dang. You and me both, man. I can't. I'll be a hypocrite if I said no to you.
we met in the same way as you and Didac.
I think I meet all my friends that way. Maybe it's me. Maybe I got to stop being such a dick.
Well, sometimes apparently that's how you make friends.
Hey, it's been working.
But I'd like to say, like, life is a complex thing, right?
It is.
And sometimes we don't have all the answers, but as long as you're striving to get those answers, that's the difference between caring and not caring, right? And me being a Christian man that I am, the basis of my belief is the greater law that Christ gave. One, love thy God above anything else, and then two, to love thy neighbor as thyself, right? Now, that's the hardest thing that we're going to incur. It's the greater law for a reason, because it's the hardest to follow, right? And I believe that there's some people that can follow all the 10 commandments, but they still can't love God and treat their neighbor with respect. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
But this is the moments in history that I feel that are going to shape our direction and where we go as a species, as a planet, right? And, it's going to be the little conversations online and on social media, and it plays a bigger role than we know, because especially people like me and you, we're putting our face out there, putting our name out there. It's not always fun waking up and going and checking your email and your social media and someone telling you what a loser you are. Right? and sometimes that can set your whole mood, right?
Yeah.
And then but there's only one planet, and that we all got to get along, and we got to love each other. And there's a quote in the Bible, and it says, if you say that you love God, but that you hate your brother, you're a liar.
Right.
And that's the gist of it. And I'm not saying people are going to be perfect, and I'm not saying there's never going to be conflict, but what's ironic is the main conflict is over God, and God would want us to not, conflate over that. So
exactly. And that's part of the reason why I kind of took to, when it comes to like the aspect of the creator and spiritual belief systems and religion and that stuff. That's why I kind of took the Sanchez route, because it seems a lot simpler to me, and it seems like the basis for which, when you see Christians sitting down with Muslims and Hindus sitting down with Sikhs, and everybody's getting along, the basis for which those people can actually vibe with each other is the understanding that there is a creator that created all of us, and we respect that notion, and we respect that thought. And you have your interpretation of how that creator operates and what you should do, what your job is as a human created by that creator. And I have my interpretation of what I should do. And as long as my interpretation doesn't involve, infringing on your rights or causing you harm and vice versa, then there's no need to argue. There's no need to debate. We just respect each other's beliefs, and
there's still reason to argue and debate, but we need to.
Well, there's less reason to argue and debate. Right.
But all right, yeah. Thank you. Enjoy them puppies.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you hear them going nuts, huh?
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah,
though.
every time
I'm a
you
dog
start
guy.
talking, every time you start talking, they start going off. They probably sense it. But I appreciate you coming on, Bebo.
Yeah, man, it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Alex that jumped in. Shout out to Didac, the brother Didac. I almost forgot his name. Sorry about that. And shout out to everybody in the chat that stuck around for this conversation. And we're probably going to have a bit more of these, because I know after the election we're going to have to find something else to start broadcasting and talking about. So, I'm working on trying to expand my horizons a little more. But
you're doing well. All right, I'm taking off.
All right, brother. Peace. But it's always good. It's always good to engage one another in conversations that you don't normally engage in, because there's always something new to learn. There's always a new way of thinking to consider. And it always leads to more. It's always a productive experience rather than a destructive experience, meaning you come away feeling like you gained something rather than coming away feeling like you got slighted or you lost something. This is why, even if somebody's wrong or I disagree with them, I'll try to let them finish their point, unless they're wrong about mischaracterizing what I'm saying or they contradict themselves. Then I have to stop and interrupt. But because I noticed on Bro Sanchez's channel, Didac doesn't really get much time to speak. So I figured if I give him a platform and hear him out, I might be able to make sense of what he's saying, because a lot of times, and it happens to me a lot on different platforms too, when people get, they start cutting you off and you don't get to finish making your point, then nobody really understands what you're saying. And then they're arguing against half of what you said rather than all of what you said. And it makes for a less constructive conversation, and it just drags things out. So, for the sake of efficiency, letting everybody get their points out has been really helpful to all of us, I hope. And I hope you guys gained something, and I hope you learned something and walked away from the show tonight with maybe if not a whole new perspective, at least more points to consider. So I'll be back here on Sunday. We're going to do the usual slideshow on Sunday and break down the some more of the narrative of what's going on, the Tale of Two Narratives and the election and the political stuff. So we'll get back to our regularly scheduled show on Sunday. And I appreciate you guys coming. I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you guys sitting through the show. And I will see you back here. Like I said, I'll see you back here on Sunday. Don't forget, you can support me using the banners scrolling across the bottom below, or Patriot Shit Outfitters at patriotshit.com, or like I told Didac, the Teespring store, or any of the other support links in the description box. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you didn't hit the like button, make sure you hit that like button. That's how we defeat the censorship. So peace out, and I'll see you guys Friday. Citizen Man, out.